Hello everyone, welcome back to our Maya 2015 series with our elf model here. We've been working on her for quite a while and we finished her reading last time and now we're into walking. And this is essentially what we're going to be looking at doing is kind of a little walk cycle like this. Just a very simple walk cycle like that. Some things to note on this. So the feet are pretty much where all the action comes in, but all the subtle things that you don't think about when it comes to animation are something you'll have to get an experience with. So what I'm talking about is how the hips sway in here. When she reaches out with this foot, her hip will sway this way, likely going back and forth. Her upper body will actually sway in counter direction, and her arms, when one leg goes forward, the arm on that leg goes back. So you'll have them pumping in opposite directions. Um, all these things are just kind of, we've built all these controls, and now you're actually going to have to get in there and move all of them. And just moving a couple of them will start to be kind of a challenge, at least for a full animation. So be patient here. Definitely be prepared to um, do this a couple times. I mean, it'll be healthy to do that for an animator. Anyway, something else I want you guys to note is keyframe spacing. Don't try to muscle in keyframes like have a space of 1 or 2 frames and then try putting another keyframe. That'll make your animation jittery, and you're taking away the power that Maya has for animation, which is it'll interpolate from one space to another. So this keyframe to this one will, if you're adding too many keyframes in, your models will start to act kind of jerky and look not natural. So I usually, when I'm making this, I'll use like increments of like 5 and 10. That way it's easy for me to track through. So anyways, this is going to be our target. We're going to try to get a model or an animation going like this, something like that, over the course of this next half an hour. Some other things I want us to kind of take a look at real quick here. Pull this up. It's just something I found on Google, which I'm sure you guys can pull up yourselves. Is the way that the walk cycle starts and ends. So you'd have like this we're going to track out our first leg, which will be our right one, and this dark colors for the inside leg. So as it goes forward, it starts out with both toe and heel up. Then we're not going to do this middle frame here where it goes foot down, toe up, and starting to come off the ground. These are called filler frames, and we're going to do those later. Usually what I do is I'll do this one, and I'll middle mouse button drag and kind of put a pasted frame up here. Well, actually it's not even this one here, it's the end of the cycle, because this is just a simple, this is half of a walk cycle really. This is the foot over here. If you look at it, comes back and ends here. If it's a full walk cycle, this one would end back where it started. So what I'm trying to say is that I do my extremes. I'll do this one, and then this one, and then I'll come back and do this one, and then I'll do these two, which seems weird. I know, and it's a weird order, but the reason why is because Maya interpolates the animation. So if I was to go here and then have a lift on this one or in this one, it makes it to where the animation from one control to the next sometimes elevates and tries to go to the next one, which transcends down to the rest of them. So just trust me that when I say that, you want to go here to here, then back to here, and then fill in the other 2 frames. It'll make more sense as we go along. Some other things to note from this is how the hip or the height goes, because as you walk, your stride lengthens and then comes back together. And when your feet are the closest is when you're at the highest. So here, where this foot is right here, this is typically your highest. In this picture, it says that this one here would be the highest. And this is only in the case that you actually are walking in a type of stride where after this, you actually go up on the balls of the feet before you come down here. Most people kind of walk with more like a shuffle. So this one here, sometimes this part here is still flat, so you're not actually more high in this area. Also, as you're leaning forward, you'd actually be at the same height. So this may not be in height, but if you look, it has this curve where it goes like this. And this is kind of how we're going to try to go with our hips going up and down as we're walking. So things to consider as we're going. All right, so let's get back into Maya. All right. Okay, so I have all these controllers here. Now, if you did your rig like I taught you, and you froze all the transforms on this, check this out. You'd be able to bring this back to 0 and delete. Well, actually, before I even go there, let's delete off all of our animation information. So to do that, I'm going to have to select all my controls that have animation on them, which are my hip sways, my pretty much everything in here. I'm just going to make sure I get it all. Okay. And then I'll just hold down Shift over on frame 50. I'm just going to drag all the way across here. I'm just going to go delete. Okay. And looks like I might have missed one over here. Let's see here. Okay, it's the pull vector. So we'll just go ahead and can that as well. Okay. Okay, so now I can start to animate. Now, if you guys are still in T-pose, so what that means, like in what I meant earlier, is if you guys did what I told you to, which is zero these out, you'd be able to go over to our controls here and just zero these guys out, and you would be, so let's see here, I don't know how these got re-keyframed, I just broke all those connections, so just make sure that happens again. There we go. So you'd be able to zero these out and then come back to their starting location, which is, you know, the start pose. I don't really care about actually getting back into T-pose, because I'm just about to bring this back to the starting pose anyways for the walk cycle. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump in there and move this guy back up. Zero these out. Okay. Alright, so let's get in here and start going. We're going to get our first pose, which is going to be this, where our back heel and our front heel are both, this one's off the ground, this one's touching. Okay. So I'm going to take this one here, I'm going to put it like this, I'm going to take this one here, put it like that. I'm going to take the hips, and this is going to be the low point, bring it down here, and I still have animation here, so let's go ahead and can that. It's probably outside the range, it's probably at 60 what happened. But anyways, let's keep going forward here. Okay, push it down like so. Now, word of warning, if you guys have, you see how this is starting to turn to the right, it's trying to aim at this, so make sure that your pull vectors are decent ways out in front of your model. I haven't parented my feet, so they'll keep pushing out as I walk, but just make sure that as you're having this go forward, that it doesn't actually ever cross the pull vector. Okay, we can animate that just to make sure that if it happens again, I can just animate them out of the way. Okay, so, and I want to make it to where, so this is what I did just now, besides the pull vectors, is I lower this down so both my feet are flat, right? I also want my feet to be a little bit closer together because I'll have them walking so spread out like that. Okay, so a little bit more together like so, right? Okay. Now this is going to let us also use our foot roll, which we created. So remember, we did our set-driven key for our foot roll. So we want to have it to where our foot is up. So I'm going to do that negative value. So negative, let's say 5. See how that looks? Maybe a little bit more. Let's do negative 7. Sure, that looks good. We'll just slide that a little bit forward. Okay. Take this one here. Let's do positive 7. Okay, and we'll push that back, kind of like so. Okay, that looks okay. Alright, so I need to keyframe these guys now. So I'm going to select that controller there. Select this controller over here and hit S. Now, you guys may have noticed I'm also starting on frame 10. Don't worry about that. I just had mine shoved forward 10 frames, but I had something else stored before that. We're going to pretend like, if you want to start on frame 10 so you can track along with me, that's fine. Or you can just pretend this is frame 1 and then count off to frame 20, 30, 40, etc. But if you just want to track straight along with me, then just start on frame 10. You could even start or save your T-pose on frame 1 if you want, and then have it go into start your start walk. Okay, so these are both keyframed. That's good. I'm also going to make sure that both my pull vectors are keyframed here. Okay. Also make sure that my hips are keyframed on this one here. So this is going to be its starting height. I also keep this here activated. There's this little key. It's on the far right here. This is called auto keyframe. It makes it to where, as we're working here, if I was to say go to anywhere on here and make any kind of adjustment to this curve, it automatically update the keyframe or even add a keyframe based on where I'm at with the timeline. So it just makes it to where my work flows a lot faster. Word of warning here, though, is that with this auto keyframe, you can accidentally overwrite things, you can accidentally break things, so just be careful with it. Know what you're doing, so if you don't know what you're doing, you might want to keep it off. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to work, let's work this foot here first. So I'm going to take this foot, and this is going to happen over a course of 10 keyframes. So from 1020, I'm going to move it to the same location as this one. So it's going to be, I'm just going to copy this value from over here, Control C, and I'm going to go over to this one here and put Control V. Okay. And you see how it already put a keyframe in there with the auto toggle? That works perfect for me. Okay, also, I got a -7 for the foot roll. So over here, I'm also going to put a positive or a -7 for the foot roll here as well. -7, not -1. There we go. Okay, so now I have like so, right? Now, there's supposed to be a lift here. Now that kind of comes back to, remember how I said I do one where it goes from here to here and then I fill in? That's what I'm talking about. Now we're going from the back, so this one over here, to the front over here. So that means that it comes off the ground. So like the middle one is this one right here. That's the next one I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to frame 5 right here, right? And it's going to be up and off the ground. Okay, it's kind of like in here. And when you're coming forward, a lot of times you're doing something more like, let's say, +3. No, not quite enough. How about +5? And let's already go up to 7 then, I guess. Let's see how that looks. Okay. You see how sometimes I said that things in Maya get inherited. So remember last time this was on the ground, but since I lifted it up, it now inherited that elevation. So now I have to snap it back down to the ground level. So this is at 0. This is not at 0. This one needs to be at 0. So I'm going to go to my translate Y, just put a 0 value in there. And now it's back down here. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. Okay, good. All right. Now something else you want to know is that as we get right here, this is actually the point where this foot over here would be right over here. So this would be actually one of the high points. So this hips control has to go up, right? So I'm just going to elevate it up kind of like so. And then this part over here, I'm just going to, so what you can do is you can copy keyframes. So like where this keyframe is here, if I middle mouse button click on 20, you see how that didn't scrub forward? Because I jumped to this position, but it's still taking the pose that we currently have here. So I can hit S, and now the pose right here, I can scrub across. See? So that was the hip rise. So now you can see it goes up, and then as it sets down, there we go. Okay? All right. Almost there. Okay, so from here, 2 frames in usually. Well, actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to complete this. So we're going to take this guy and bring it all the way back. So that means that from 10 to 20, it goes up to over here. And then from 20 to 30, I'm going to have it go back. So I'm going to start on frame 10. I'm just going to middle mouse button over here. So this was the ending frame, remember? So I can hit S. So now as it goes forward, gets up, plants down. Now remember, 30 is back to start position, so now it slides all the way back to start. Okay, cool. I do want to pause though halfway down, so 25. I'm gonna hit S. Over 25. There we go. Is on frame 2. I want this actually to go flat, so I'm gonna zero out my foot roll. So go. There we go. I really think this should be over in 26. It looks more natural right there. So, and then this guy, as it gets to about right here, that should be the height, and then somewhere in here, so let's say it's going to be right here. Okay. That means that the height on this one also has to be somewhere around there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this one back and overwrite this one. Which means that where it goes back over here on 30 needs to be this guy right here. So I'm just copying keyframes now. This might be a little bit too high. I might end up adjusting this later on, but for now, that's good. That's actually a full walk cycle. You see how it starts here, goes out, comes back, it's back to the start point. Okay, great. Now we can go ahead and do the other side. Okay, got this side right here. Okay, so now frame 10, we need to be switching positions here, right? So I'm just going to go back to this guy. I'm going to copy this one's translate Z. I'm going to go over to this controller again. I'm going to paste that in there, but not until I get to frame 20. So let's go to frame 20, paste that in there. Okay, there we go. Also, I need to bring that to a positive 7, right? Okay, perfect. So now, as I go over here, good, right? Now remember, after 2 frames, I actually zeroed out this guy. So this goes from -5 to 0 really quickly. So she puts her foot flat relatively fast. Okay. Okay. Also, on the high point for this guy, which is looks like should be about right there. Add a keyframe anyways, right in there. So that's good. Now for this guy, the finishing move is on 30. So I'm just going to copy the first one over to 30, right? So there we go. Middle mouse button, and then just keyframed it. So now I have this, and then it tries to slide back, but we still have to do the same thing we did to this one, which was once it got to the start here, it starts to go up, right? So we're going to do the same thing on this one. As game would go up here, we're going to say this is where they cross, so this should be kind of the high point, right? So I'm going to take this one, lift it up. Put a value of 5 here, or 7. Okay. Okay, so now we're going. You see now how this foot here is trying to float up? That's because Maya is trying to push that translate Y again on us. So we're going to go back in here and I say, okay, well, I'm going to say no to that. And that's just because we lifted it up over here. There we go. Boom. All right. We got ourselves a foot cycle, walk cycle. Okay. Let's take a look and see what we got going on. So I just shortened this up to 30 so that now it'll just play in cycle. Okay, that's a good walk cycle, right? We are pumping. Good. All right, so now we're going to add a little bit of flair to this. And it looks like also there's something I need to adjust. Looks like the knee in here is actually ducking a little bit far inward, and that's because our pole vector here is getting sucked in a little too close. We're going to have to bring that guy out. So I'll say keyframe here. That's better. Okay. All right. Next step. We're going to deal with. So I think I'm okay with the stride up and down. That looks okay for now. Next is going to be the arms. The arms are the next animal we're going to tackle. So we're going to start on frame 1. Some things we're going to keep in mind with our arms is that if the leg that's back, that means that the other arm is forward. So this is the leg that's back. That means that this is the arm that's forward, and then this arm here is back. So you're going to want to take your translate for your arm, which is this box here, and then we have our rotate as well. So now, word of warning, if you guys have not done this, I did this in my last lesson, I want to make sure you guys did it as well. You need to lock this here. So when we add keyframes, if this isn't locked, you're going to break this control to where it won't follow where this box goes. So your controller will get left behind up in here. So you'll just want to go select this, go right mouse button, and go to lock selected. That'll make it to where this is protected for when you do animation. Alright, so let's get to it. We're going to, this position here is actually okay. You don't want to go too far past the thigh with a regular walk. The faster you're moving, the more these are pumping. So if you're on a regular walk, this won't come much further than your thigh. So this might actually be even too far. Let's push this down just a little bit further. Maybe down here. Okay. And we're going to add a keyframe here. Let's also, so we have our hand here. Let's go ahead and utilize our fist as well. So we got our, let's put a value of, let's say 3 here. So kind of just slowly close the hand a little bit. Okay. And let's also make sure it's rotated in a way that I'm satisfied with, which I'm okay with. Let's go ahead and just add a little bit of a curve inward. Okay. Go ahead and hit S. Okay, so that's good. Now when it switches places, so this one's going to go to, actually let's also get the pole vector involved here. So we have all 3 of these controls done. So we have this one keyframed, we have this one keyframed. We also want to make sure our pole vector over here is keyframed. So we ask for that one. Okay, so now we're going to go to frame 20. Sorry. Okay, so frame 20 now. This leg's forward, so that means this leg needs to come, or this arm here has to come back, right? So we're going to push it back, something like that. And we're going to also want to take our control here. We're going to take our wrist and bring it like so. Might be a little too high. Let's not quite so far back. Something like that. Okay. Not too far, just a little bit. Okay, it starts to go too far back. It starts to look like she's pumping her arm. We have the same deal with having to go too far forward. Something else I've noticed that also kind of looks nice is taking the pole vector, and this mainly works for females. If you move this back to one direction, it kind of makes their elbows kind of point in kind of like a triangle. It gives them more of like a feminine kind of look. So we're gonna move it just slightly to the back of it, next to where elbows point at her back. Okay. And then from here, we can the middle one. So this is where it goes between. I'm going to have this go just a little bit lower. And I'm going to have her control here also rotate down, kind of like so. Maybe just have this open up to 1. Okay, so this one was set to 3 before, so there we go. That arm looks okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at it from a different angle. Okay, good. Alright, so then all I have to do is copy keyframes, alright? So I'm going to take this one here, start with the big one. I'm going to go to, this is where it ends at, right? So as it comes back, it needs to be over here. So I'm going to go to 10, I'm going to copy it over to 30. I'm going to go to 15, I'm going to copy that over to 25. Okay. I'm going to select this control, the wrist one. I'm going to go back to frame 10. I'm going to copy this one to frame 30. I'm going to go to frame 15 and copy this one to frame 25. Okay. That looks good. Let's go ahead and check the full vector now. So this one I'm just going to simply copy over to frame 30. So there we go. That was pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, let's get a little further back. I think that might be a little too much of a finger clinch. It needs to be a little more subtle, otherwise when it repeats it looks kind of funny. Let's take that to 2.5. Okay. Okay, that's better. Alright, so we need to repeat the same thing over here. Now this other hand pumping doesn't have to be quite as identical as the feet. I don't have to copy and paste keyframes or any of that kind of stuff. The reason why is because they're not right next to each other like the feet are. Okay. Alright, so on frame 10, I'm going to bring this one back. Let's go ahead and push it back, kind of back in this area. Okay. Like so. That's okay. Go ahead and keyframe the full vector as well. And the wrist control. Okay. Good. Okay. So now up to frame 10, or 20, in my case. I'm going to bring this one now forward, so as it goes over here, I'm just going to bring it out like so. I'll also do the rotation for the hand, add a little bit of a clench there. Okay. Okay, let's see how that's going. Honestly, I don't think I really need to mess with the full vector now. Maybe at 10 it needs to come back a little bit more, so that's not there. And maybe over at 20 I'll then pull it back a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so now it's the middle part. We're at 15. We have this actually go down. Okay. And we also do the rotation a little bit. Okay. Okay. And maybe just a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now let's just copy and paste the keyframes again. So now we're going to take this one and we're going to bring this all the way over to 30. So I'm on frame 10, middle mouse button on frame 30, and hit S. I'm going to go to frame 15, middle mouse button on 25, hit S. Okay. Same thing with our wrist control. So I'm going to select frame 10, go back to frame 30, hit S, and I'm going to go to frame 15. Now I'll go to frame 25 and hit S. Okay, so that handles that. Now the pull vector, same deal. Frame 10 over to frame 30. We're not doing middle ones with that one. Okay. Let's see what we're looking at so far here, guys. We got press play. It's looking pretty good. Happy with that. Okay. So let's get some more flair going on here. I know this is running a little bit long. We're over 30 minutes already, but we got a little bit more to go on this walk cycle, so I'm going to just push forward and get a little bit of a longer video here. Okay, so hips. So whichever way, so we're going to start on frame 10. So if the hips are, you see how, like, you know, she has this foot forward, that means that her hips are going to be going this way. So I'm going to push her hips out slightly in this direction. And hit S. You see how I like a negative here, so I can just copy this value, and I can go to frame 20, where she changes, and just, actually I don't have to copy it now I think about it. I can just delete that negative, hit enter, and now it's swaying the other way, right? And do the same thing on frame 30. I'll just copy and paste this one in here. There we go. So let's see what that does for us. So that looks good. Okay. A little bit of an exaggeration on the hips way, but you know what? It's okay, it's animation. That kind of stuff is tolerated. We're actually going to go a step further. We're going to add in some chest control movement. Okay, so on frame 10 here, we want to kind of experiment with this, and I think that this had a rotation already built into it, but you want to, like, so if the hips are swaying this way, you want the chest to kind of turn into it. So we're going to have this chest kind of somewhat turn this way. Okay, so there we go. Let's do -10. You hit S, and then on frame 20, we'll do +10. You hit S, and then we'll middle mouse button drag that from start frame. Okay, so let's see what that does for us. Okay, subtle. Okay. Now, next step is also the back push. So this, let's see if okay, so I think that I missed that part as well. So let's go ahead and just, we'll do forward like that. We'll come to this part here where it goes back. Do back, forward, back, and then forward. And that kind of like makes it to where it looks like the chest is somewhat heaving a little bit as she's walking. So let's see how that looks. It's kind of subtle, but I can see it there. Okay. Let's also add a little bit of a head bob. Let's see here, maybe this might help as well. Yeah, let's go ahead and try add a little bit of that in there as well. So have her lean just a little bit forward here. And as she comes up, at her high point here, she'll lean back. As she goes forward. So then this part here, I can just copy keyframes again. So we'll just go every 5 increment and just leapfrog forward. Okay, see how that looks. That's good. We can even add a little bit of a head bob. Now this part here you gotta be kind of subtle with. If you go too much with the head bob, it starts to look kind of weird. So we'll add a keyframe, kind of do a, so she's already kind of facing that way, so let's do I think it's gonna discuss. Hey, sorry, I'm not starting the video over at 36 minutes. I can wait on that phone call. Alright, so on frame 20, I'm going to go ahead and tilt the head just a little bit. So there we go. And we'll just copy and paste this one over here and see how that looks. Okay, that looks good. Alright, so last thing we're going to do, which is getting the forward movement. This is key, especially if you guys are going to be doing video games, because you need root motion for this actually to work inside video games. Otherwise, you're going to be hard coding the movement. And same goes for animation as well. Okay, so what I usually do on frame 10, I'll hit S to keyframe my global control here. Now to get the forward movement, so as this is moving forward, how do you go about getting the actual movement accurate? Which is kind of hard. So what I usually do is I'll stick my finger on the screen, which is what I'm doing exactly right now. I'm going to scrub forward. So my finger on the screen is on the front heel. So if you put your finger on the heel, say, okay, I'm going to scrub forward now. So this is the max of movement, right? So now I can go to my move tool. I'm just going to move the model forward to where my finger is, to where my heel should be right on top of where my finger is. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test that out. You might end up with a little bit of sliding. You'll kind of have to fix that in the graph editor a little bit later. We'll do that in the graph editor on a separate lesson. But let's go ahead and get the next one as well. So put my finger on that heel there. It's going to, oops. We're going to frame 30. Okay, we'll hit S again. Alright, so let's see what we got. So we're going to go one here. So it's still a little bit too far. You know what we can do? We could always move this back a little bit. So if it's going, and if we turn on wire on shaded, it's not going to work with the ground reference. I'm going to have to change renders to default. Oh, it's because it's a single plane, that's why. Never mind. Okay. I can work around it. Anyway, so we're going to go, you see it's sliding just a little bit. So this actually needs to move up to about here. Okay. We're pushing 40 minutes now, so this final part here, I'm actually going to go through a little bit more in the next lesson so we can kind of refine this down. I'm going to move this back to 20, and I'll finish that in the next lesson. Okay, so let's just go ahead and see what we got going on here so far. So hand movement, head movement, hand movement, foot movement. We got all this stuff going together. It's looking pretty good. If it's playing too fast, you can always go through inside your animation editor here and say, okay, let's knock this down to 12 is a little bit too slow, but just for playback right now. Obviously, we're not going to animate at 12 frames per second. We'll want to scale out our animation to where it actually fits, but this gets it done to where it actually looks correct. Mathematically, it makes sense to me as I'm making it. Looks like I have a little bit of room to fix right here where the foot kind of goes down, but I think I'm going to handle that in the next lesson. So I'll do the next lesson. We're going to do a little bit of refinement on some of the controls that need to be just touched up a little bit. We'll do a refinement on the end of the walk cycle, and we'll set up for a new animation. We'll switch it up from a walk cycle to a run cycle in the next lesson. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.